All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Isvari, for joining me. This mental health awareness talk. It's always nice to have people here. This program talk studio. I'm positive I can get a lot of insights from you because you have a very strong profile. Not only you are a writer, you have a background in physics. You are also president of nonprofit. So doing so much, I have the first question I want to start with is how possibly, starting everything different and all of a sudden, not only just trying to help people in mental health and spread awareness, is, totally leading this, starting as a campaign and starting impact. So how this all happened.
Yeah. So I guess part of that question is how I keep jumping from things in my life. So I'll start there. But
Who
I
says
think that is
so?
that is mostly I just have a lot of interests and I really try to explore them fully. So I think there's a lot of value into taking time to explore hobbies or things that might interest you that aren't your traditional career. I think it makes you a lot stronger at whatever it is you do in your day job to have these interests. And then if they ever grow into something, you can sort of pursue them and move into them. So that's sort of been my motto or my the way that I run my career. With this in particular, with Dweebs Global, with the nonprofit, it sort of started just from the awareness of what was going on post COVID-19. Had no intention of starting anything. I
Mhm.
sort of just posted this post on LinkedIn and offering my help however I could help people with editing resumes for free or just being a shoulder to
Mhm.
cry on, being willing to talk to people who might have
Right.
mental health issues. And tons of people, flooded my inbox with requests. And a lot of people reached out to me and said, hey, I'm happy to help you help other people. And so my sister, Jenny, she's an executive director at Dweebs. My husband, Nathan, he's another executive director at Dweebs. So the three of us we were doing this like creative YouTube project on the side. And it was something we were doing to keep ourselves interested because Jenny's a policy analyst. My husband and I are lawyers. We have a very boring day job. Sometimes it's not creative. So we created a YouTube account. We were just having fun. But because of that, we had a website. We had this developed infrastructure. So we were like, okay, we'll just drop it on this website and we'll say, if people need help, here is the list of 10 people willing to help you. And then it sort of exploded from there. We didn't have time to change the website. We actually surrendered our private YouTube channel to the nonprofit because we had no time to change anything. We took down all our old content. We made it about helping people. But it was very much luck. We happened to the right people. We realized there was a huge need for this sort of help during COVID-19 and we just ran with it. So it
Oh,
was very much just luck.
so that was more or less COVID-19 that got you started.
Yeah, we've always been sort of helping people in a lot of different ways, volunteering. Nathan does a lot of pro bono work. Jenny has
Right.
actually volunteered for a lot of different places in DC, but I think it was really COVID-19 that was the catalyst for realizing people needed these very basic services very, very immediately.
Mhm. Got you. I've been following your profile a little bit, and I saw that you were quite coming up, opening up, inviting people to help you, help you, and plus a lot of people. There were a lot of responses. I also watched one of your videos. I think you guys were maybe promoting. So great job. I think yeah, that's very
You.
exciting. You really not only just started, you have started accomplishing. Great. So tell me about this mental health awareness. I have one question, and I will ask you more, as we move in. Why still? I mean, people are everyone is talking about mental health awareness, and of course, the ratio is never the same as it is in the United States and India.
Yeah.
What do you think, if I may ask you one question and they can move forward, is what do you think? What are the couple of things that is stopping this mental health awareness, the level that it should have in India, that it is in the United States?
Yeah, I find it fascinating that you think it's good in the United States because that itself is, I think, is
Yes, it is.
really it's untrue, but it is a lot better in the United States than it is in India. It's sort of a scale of countries, right? I think it's even better in Europe, in many countries in Europe. It's worse in the United States and it's worse in India, but it's even worse in other countries as well. And I think it comes a lot down to culture and I would say access to almost access to books and movies and pop culture and celebrities who have come out as having these mental issues or mental struggles, because I think a lot of us have them and a lot of us go through them. But if you
Yeah.
come from a country where admitting those things is career suicide, it is a lot harder to acknowledge that and to share that. So for example, in the United States, I think it really depends what career you're in. You're much likelier to have people who are themselves in therapy or in therapeutic work, or who are writers or creative artists or designers or all this, admit that they are struggling with mental health issues, than you are to find lawyers or doctors or people who work in the government who have security clearances admit that they have these issues. Because in those fields, you can lose your license. Maybe people will think you're not fit, you're not qualified to do your job. And I think a lot of that is about miseducation, which comes back to what I was saying with celebrities coming out, books and movies talking about it. Because the truth is, there are people who have, and not just depression or anxiety, which I think are easy to talk about, but personality disorders, schizophrenia, what we consider of as more serious mental health issues, even ones that aren't fully treated or they're not fully recovered from them, but they work through them. They are amazing bosses, leaders, friends. They're fully capable. They can do amazing things, but because of the narrative that's there, people don't believe that. And so they don't get the help they need, because then they're worried about that diagnosis. And so I think that's really the big thing. And in India, I think people are even more traditional than here. They're worried what their family thinks. It's harder to break away from your family and community than it is in the United States. So that's just another added barrier.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can't agree more. Um, one question that I have, and I think I'd love to ask this question for most of my guests is, what do you think? If I can offer you three options, is mental health underrated, overrated, or fairly rated? Or does it differ, and how it works? Because you must see one of the reasons why there is a lot of difference of opinion when it comes to mental health, because some people believe, so let's say in India, I can give you an example how it works. But if you ask people, people over 40 or 50, stress, it's a part of my life. I mean, how stress, what is it? This is
Yeah.
something that we do and take every day. It's like, so nothing. However, I see the armed forces there. I think I believe is underrated, because this is a part of your job. It doesn't matter what you see. So what's
Yeah.
your opinion? Is it underrated, overrated, or fairly rated? How do you see that?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And I I think a lot of us who are in the field of mental health are like, of course it's underrated. How is this even a question? And I do believe it's underrated, but I want to take the time to sort of explain why for people who might not agree with that automatically. So the reason that it is underrated is partly because we cannot talk about it. So even if a person themselves is extremely up with the times and knows all the lingo and can really communicate with people and knows how important it is still underrated for that person because of their lack of ability to communicate about those issues with society in general. And I also think just the fact that people associate mental health with job stress or work stress is itself an indicator of how underrated it is. Because if you think about physical health, if you ask people, is physical health underrated? They aren't going to talk about the fact that they may get cuts or bruises at their day job. If they're a construction worker, they aren't talking about the cuts and bruises they're getting. When you say physical health, they think about things like cancer, diabetes, loss of limbs. Like there are all sorts of serious physical health issues they think about and they talk about. Mental health, the only things we ever talk about publicly are depression and anxiety. And honestly, we also tend to only talk about the light versions of that, such as job stress. That's not to say it isn't bad. That's not to say it doesn't need to be dealt with. It does. It is important. We need to talk about it. But there are so many serious mental health issues that we just don't talk about. People don't go into their doctor. People go to their doctor for a checkup every year. They don't go into their therapist every year for a checkup, even though it's equally important. People think of physical illness as something that you don't control. People think of mental illness as something you control, even though, leading science shows that a lot of it is hormonal or innate or a result of what you've been through. Just like if you break a leg in a car accident, it's not your fault. If somebody hurts you to the extent that your brain cannot function, that's also not your fault. And we don't talk about treatments, we don't talk about regular check-ins, and we certainly don't talk about some of the more serious mental health issues that people face from the time they're a child onwards. So when we talk about accommodating people in the workplace, it's not only about the average person who needs a sick day, which I think is what we're talking about. When we talk about depression, anxiety, people should have mental health sick days. And that is definitely one thing. We also need to talk about disability accommodation, where, we have people who might be in wheelchairs or who may have physical health issues. They may have a disability physically. We find ways to accommodate them in our workplace because it's important to have their perspective. They're often brilliant workers and they just need a little accommodation. It's exactly the same thing with people who may have what people think of as more serious mental health issues, when in reality, people with personality disorders or, suicidal tendencies, etc., are often just ignored. Like, oh my God, that's so far beyond the pale, I can't even think about it. When in reality, it's a lot more common than people realize.
True.
So that's sort of why I think it's underrated. We don't really even talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But would you also comment here, overrated when we say, so you see that, I'm especially talking about keeping India as a scenario. So
Yeah.
here, people start, even if you have a little stress, people sometimes start being, parents especially, overprotective. What would you like to comment if you would like to? And they say,
Yeah, this is a great point.
stress, yes.
Yeah, this is a great point. So I think especially in India, and I sort of at Dweebs we work a lot with people in India, and I personally, of course, I'm Indian American. I know a lot of people in India. So I think what happens with India especially is that parents really care. Parents and families are so involved for
Sure.
your entire life, which I think is wonderful, and I think it's a great stress reducer. But parents really worry about their kids being stressed. They take less effort to figure out how to change that, and they take very little accountability in their children's management of stress. Very little. So not that it's great in the United States, and I'd say only in very progressive families do you have the parents really going out and taking accountability. It's the same everywhere. Parents don't like to be responsible for what has happened with the kid, right? So they take credit for career success, which is very fair, and I think it's great. But they don't realize the pressure that puts on the kid, or about the way that they communicate things can put a lot of stress on children. So in Asian families in general, there's a lot of pressure for career success, and there's a lot of very negative language used when children are young that creates a lot of pressure, and that sticks with you as you become an adult, as you go through college. What happens if I fail? My family's depending on me. This is about, who I am as a person. My entire identity is about my career. A lot of Indian parents say things growing up like, so-and-so is doing this, why can't you do this? Which is actually a very, very terrible thing to tell children, but they don't realize the impact that has on lasting mental health. So I think with stress, parents are they're like, the minute they think their kid is stressed, they're like, oh my God, I don't want my kid stressed. I want them to be happy, but they're not willing to put in the work to make their kid happier. Because even if they're adults, it is not too late to change the way that you speak to your kid, the way that you build their self-worth around who they are as a person and not what they accomplish, which is the key to mental health. And it's the key to mindfulness, is accepting what you are doing, not worrying about the outcome of what you are doing. And I think there's a huge pressure in India to worry about the outcome and those success metrics and that comparison with the other billions of people in the world, and that is not healthy. So I think there's a real role for parents to play there. There are great resources online for parents to, they teach you sort of, instead of saying this, say this, don't say these things to kids who are stressed, don't say these things to people who are depressed. And if you read them, you'll see like Indian parents will say like 10 of these things every day, because they don't realize it's so harmful. So I think that's what I would encourage is just, looking at those resources. It's not, I've also found a lot of Indian parents think that it's like they can't ask for help because that's admitting they were a terrible parent, and they don't want to admit that. But this is about helping your kid. It's not about your pride as a parent or something. It is helping your kid to go out and to talk to people who know what they're doing. There's also this stigma with therapists, and that shouldn't be there.
That's beautiful insights. I mean, Thank you. It's really, really nice to hear things, that has more insights. Somebody has said that the insight is gold, knowledge is passe. So I think that this is what really works, right? Beautiful. The question that I have, and since you're talking here is, and it's always nice, it's an information age. So you'll
Yeah.
find things from everywhere. So in this age, what really, really matters is your personally discovered wisdom. How did you figure out? I mean, because, and that's the only unique thing. I sometimes wonder when people say that, and it's natural. Everybody is learning a copy of a copy, and people are trying to be different. So when you're doing the same stuff, it's very hard to be different. So
Yeah.
in that scenario, the one thing that really, really guarantees you to be different is your personally discovered techniques, tactics, mechanism that you have.
Definitely.
What
Yeah.
happens with your coping mechanism, or maybe when it comes to handling or helping some of your best ones or loved ones help with emotional balance or stress? Anything
Yeah,
in
these are wonderful questions. So I actually sort of helped our mental health team at Dweebs Global create our training resources. So I put a lot of thought into this. And I think that for me personally, I have watched a lot of people go through extremely serious mental health crises, and I have had a lot of mental health struggles of my own as well. And I think that there is a lot of, if there's nothing else that you know how to do, I think communication is key. People often don't share how they're feeling or what they need, and they don't share that with their family. They don't share that with the people who are hurting them. And I think that the more communication, the better. Now, it can be really hard to communicate with, if you have a mental illness at the moment, or if you're talking to someone who does, it can be really hard to communicate. I found that because you can get really angry if you have an anger management issue. Like, you can get very angry if you are very depressed. It can be very hard to even get the energy to speak about it, but it is really important to cross that communication barrier. And even if you don't have someone to communicate with, communicating with yourself is really important, like admitting, okay, I am feeling sad because this, so that you can challenge those notions, which is the key to cognitive behavioral therapy. And it is the key to mindfulness. It's basically recognizing what you are feeling and assessing whether or not it is true. So for example, if you think I'm a failure, you think to yourself, okay, I feel like a failure because I didn't, like, let's say you're on social media, I didn't grow another 100 followers this week. And then
Absolutely.
reminding yourself that, okay, so I feel like a failure because of this specific thing. You can then challenge that, just because I didn't gain 100 followers doesn't mean that I won't grow more next week. Doesn't mean that that's the only metric of success. Doesn't mean that I can't be happy. All these things. So you have to correct that in your mind. And that requires you to first admit what is going on. So I have a lot of friends who are practicing therapists and professionals, as psychologists and psychiatrists here in the United States. And they all say that a lot of the research shows that any technique from cognitive behavioral therapy to meditation to talk therapy works about the same. The research shows they work about the same, because what I think is actually going on personally is that the biggest barrier is this communication, this willingness to go and get help or to talk to someone is doing a lot of the work. And so just talking to someone can really help. And that's sort of the whole idea behind Dweebs Global as well. It's just giving someone to talk to for free, because they may not have that in their country or in their community. So I think that is the one thing, is communicating honestly to yourself and those around you.
Ah, wonderful. So, to put that in a sentence is like, talk to someone, especially to yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think talk honestly.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. And I think you're very right. Most of the therapies, in fact, all of it, it all comes down to speaking to yourself and figuring out what's wrong. So change always happens inside out. So I think, it's very true. It's very, very true. Wonderful, wonderful. So communication is what you suggest,
Yeah.
strongly suggest.
And I think
Step.
it does the most help as well, just talking to people and assessing what's going on with you. I apologize about the lighting, by the way. Like, the sun totally went behind the clouds. So I was like, okay.
Oh, no, no. It's perfectly fine. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. So, okay, perfect. I have, one question, one follow-up question here on communication, because, you know, this is something that everybody would suggest. But since we have been spending a lot of time, investing a lot of time, and trying to actually make a difference, I would like to ask a more insightful question here. Why it is the communication is still the biggest help, yet the least used tool. People would like to do anything but communicate.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult, especially for people with sort of the two issues we talk the most about, depression and anxiety. In
Right.
addition to them being the most frequent issues we talk about, they also conflate with other mental health issues. So people who
Yeah.
have borderline personality disorder often also have depression. People who are autistic are more likely to be depressed and anxious, etc. And depression and anxiety make it very, very hard to communicate. Depression literally sucks
Ah,
the energy out of you. It's very hard to get up in the morning, and it's very hard to do anything. If you can make it through the day and feed yourself and get through work, that is awesome. And it's hard to get there. With anxiety, you just get very stressed having these conversations. A lot of people will get shaking and chilled. Some people will collapse. Like, it is very difficult knowing that you are having a conversation about something so personal. So it's like the mental health issue itself is fighting against your ability to fix it. This is very common. So I actually have some suggestions for this, which is often, if you cannot start with communication, start with mindfulness. The goal should always be communication, but mindfulness will give you a little bit of a mental reserve for you to use to communicate. And then
right.
the second suggestion I always have is talk to a stranger. So, or talk anonymously. So this is the idea behind hotlines. It's the idea behind Dweebs Global. It's the idea behind the whole wonderful slew of mental health organizations. It takes away some of that anxiety and some of that extra effort that you have to spend if you're not talking to someone who you think will judge you or will remember forever, will know you, might work with you as your family, right? Like, it's very hard. So talking, and the other thing is talking to someone who's a professional. I do think sometimes people think, okay, talking to anyone is the same thing. I am not one of those people who thinks the only people who can help are licensed therapists at all. I think friends play an important role, but
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
do think that there is a role for people who you do not know yet, because they approach your situation with fresh eyes and they are able to talk to you. And I think there's a role for people who have been trained because they know what not to say. And it is very easy for someone who
Yeah.
cares about you to actually say something that's harmful because they don't know better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is where, a really good point you mentioned. And this is what I suggest. I mean, when I communicate, I discuss about this mental health issue, especially to the people who consider counseling as advice. Well, I very, humbly differ, saying that it's about, there are two kinds of help: personal help and professional help, right? So there is a reason why personal help doesn't help, because you don't know how to help. So when you connect your desire or intent to help with the techniques how to help, and
Yeah.
you very rightly mentioned what not to say is more important. But when you help someone personally, that's why a lot of people come across, they started helping people so much, and now the only thing they want to do is not help anyone. Why?
Yeah.
Because they have been trying to help personally, got rejected, things didn't go the way they wanted it to go, and then bad experience.
That is such a good point. And I also think, like, therapists, for example, even licensed therapists will not treat their friends. And there is a
True.
reason for that.
True.
I think there's a lot of value into speaking to someone you don't know, and that is really important. So, if you're the people around you haven't been able to help you, that's pretty common. You shouldn't feel like you have very bad luck or very bad friends or you are a bad person. None of that is necessarily true. The people around you not being able to actually help you is very common.
Absolutely. What would you suggest, a few more? So definitely therapist is one. What are the different ways? You mentioned mindfulness, and that was a good point because, it's a situation kind of that when I asked, the communication is difficult. Yes. So when you're depressed, the one thing you must do is communicate, and the only thing you can do when you're depressed is not able to communicate. So I think
Yeah.
mindfulness was in a good suggestion where people can start with. What else? What are the different ways? What would you suggest to people who are emotionally broken? Where else? What they can do?
Yeah, so I think the thing that everybody should try and start out with is keeping a very detailed log. And this is hard, I know, especially with depression, because it's difficult to like force yourself to do it every day, which is why the key is getting that mental reserve from mindfulness or for meditating every day should give you at least a little window to do this. And if you keep a log of what makes you feel happy and feel sad every day, like when are you feeling sadder, when are you feeling happier, I recommend just starting with like the week, and noting some big events that happen every day, and then just rating your like happiness and stress and any other emotion you are struggling with, if it's anger or anything else, from 1 to 10, and just looking at it like, which days am I happy, or what did I do those days? So if you do this for a couple of weeks, you will see these really insightful results. And I've never found anyone who wasn't astounded by what they found. Like, people have found out that these things they thought didn't bother them were really setting a mood for the day. They noticed that, okay, every day that I have to drive to work, I am having, a lot of this huge issue. Or every day I eat carbs or I eat pasta, I have this problem, right? You don't notice these things, but if you start keeping a log, you will see these things. And then it's a question of just slowly trying to cut back on the things that are causing you stress and investing in your own happiness. And if it is so bad that you are unable to communicate, unable to get help, this is the most important thing that you need to be focusing on right now. So it is the most important work you're doing. It's the most important thing you can do for your family. So you should take that time to be happy. So what I do with people that I'm helping, if they are like my friends or people I'm helping professionally, is if they notice, I've noticed a lot of people have a dip around Wednesday. It's halfway through the work week. So schedule a massage, or, have, like, if you have a friend or family member to give you a massage. If you want to, go have a nice shower or a bath, if you want to eat something special that day, whatever you actually notice makes you happy, read a book, whatever, just take the time to do it, even if it's 3 hours, 4 hours, even if it's the whole day. Because right now, if things are so bad you can't communicate, trust me, this is the most important investment into your future career, into your future health. And so you need to grow that reserve of energy so then you can get yourself to a place where you can communicate or try these cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that might work in the long term. So I think that's what I recommend, is if you just document your week, you'll notice what actually gives you more energy, and then just do that more often until you can grow enough energy to make some permanent changes.
Absolutely. What would you recommend, just a follow-up question quickly before I get on the another one, is, so this is a thing with people, even if they choose to go to a therapist, it's like there's nothing tangible, so I know you not as a therapist, but what would you recommend otherwise to a professional, mental health professional, how they should, what they should do, or how they should do, so that people start believing that they are achieving a milestone, things are happening? Because generally happens, after a few sessions, you said 5 sessions as a practice, after 2 sessions they come, I don't think anything is happening. So I mean, that's the situation with
so I want to thank you for caveating. I am not a therapist, and I am definitely someone who's been on the receiving end of a lot of these services. And as many of my friends, I've also helped a lot of people get through very difficult situations therapists could not help them with. So I want to say, take my advice with a pinch of salt. I come from a place where I have felt very personally hurt by bad therapists, and I feel and not just like, I have a lot of friends who are therapists, who are great therapists. I've met great therapists. I know, we've worked with great, all of this, but I think it's weird, because I think therapy is simultaneously overrated and underrated. Not enough people go, but when people go, they expect too much out of it. Ooh. So I think the key is understanding that therapy is a tool. So there's two different things, right? There are pharmacists and psychiatrists and stuff who will give you pills. Right. That is closer to like a management of a disease, right? You can expect results immediately, and if it doesn't work, you need to go back and they need to give you something else. Because therapy is a very difficult process. It's like retraining a muscle. They're more like a personal trainer. You're not going to grow arm muscles overnight. It takes time. It's not like taking steroids, right? Like that. It's not. And if people think it's going to be like that. So therapy can also be very expensive each session. So I would say that my first recommendation for people who want to see success measurements is, I already hear from you. You're the type of person who would benefit, I think, personally, more from cognitive behavioral therapy than talk therapy. So I would encourage people to find therapists who have a background in or a degree in cognitive behavioral therapy, if you can't afford it, to go and find resources for cognitive behavioral therapy online. There's literally a whole toolkit on our website. We've compiled, I think, the most exhaustive sort of set, just because we found it wasn't easily available, but there are other resources there. You just have to dig a little bit. And we have some links to them as well on our website. But the idea is that you're really helping yourself, and you're measuring these metrics every week that I was talking about, like how happy you are. Does your happiness go up and down? And if it doesn't work, when you go back to your therapist next week, they will tell you, you know, clearly this didn't work. You need to change these things. Let's try this. Let's see if this works. So it's much more hands-on. You can actually track your progress. You feel a lot better about it. Now, it doesn't work for everyone. Some people prefer talk therapy. They prefer, you know, just generally talking, or they prefer a more you know, a less rigorous approach. But if you're the type of person who's like, I'm not seeing results, I was like this too, and I think a lot of people are, then I think cognitive behavioral therapy will be better for you.
Absolutely. Very good. I think it's a great piece of advice for, people, audience who are listening. I think you can certainly take that. So now I have, and I think this is now I'm getting into a little political side of it, not
Yeah.
political, is like, what is one thing, if I know from your own personal opinion, and what's one thing that you think is not very effective in mental health, and I'm talking globally, needs to be changed? One thing, if you something stands up in your mind that I wish if this were changed, because there must be some reason why things are not happening, despite the whole universe is trying to come together and make an awareness. Everybody is talking about awareness, still people are not aware. Everybody is asking people to communicate, still people are not. What is one thing that you think should change and everything else will?
Yeah, it is really too broad, but stigma.
Yeah.
I know it's too broad. It's sort of hard to say, but I think it's literally what the single thing that needs to change is leaders need to come out and say, I have this mental illness and I still accomplished this. I have this issue and I am able to do this. I like, people need to come out and admit they have these things and share them with people, because then people will realize it is okay, especially with serious illnesses. I have brilliant, successful friends who are leading incredibly large companies, who are working in high levels of government, who are just very accomplished people, who are who have Asperger's, who have schizophrenia, who have personality disorders, who have very serious mental health issues that they have to work so hard through every day of their lives. They're extremely accomplished people. They are not broken. They are not in mental health facilities. They are not incapable of anything. They're not incapable of being good friends or workplaces or anything, but they will not share this except with their closest friends, because if they do, they will lose their job, their status, people will not want to work with them. I am aware that I myself have been dancing around whether or not I have struggled with things, because it is hard, because it is something that I can't share without risking a lot of my career, etc. So this is what needs to happen. The people who are in a position of power, who will not lose that power, need to be honest, and they need to come forward. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did this. Brilliant, beautiful. People need to keep doing this. People who are retired, who can afford to do it now. People who are celebrities, people who aren't going to lose their money or their status or their fame or power, they need to come out and say these things. That is the single thing that I think needs to happen for people to start treating these as serious issues. I don't think there's any alternative for this. I don't.
There isn't. I can think of, and I think you pinpointed really, really sharply. And I think, when I think of, come to think of it, I realize that very true, because think about it, all the serious illness, physical, and body illness I'm talking about, 10 years, 20 years ago, those illnesses were stigmatized. I mean, you wouldn't like to talk that I have cancer. You wouldn't like to talk that I have this. But since, ever since the awareness came and people started speaking, we started getting to know that, oh, even he has, oh, okay, it's common.
Yeah.
So
I think women's issues are a great example of this. So I don't know to the extent that it's true everywhere, but I think a lot of women have started talking to people when their family and their male bosses, even male people, hey, I have these gynecological issues. I have very painful periods. I can't come to work today. Like, this has become normalized. So now women can talk about it. But 10 years ago, 30 years ago, you could not say these things. So that's why it's important to set that from the top down.
Very good. Very good. I mean, these are great points. I recently, on LinkedIn only, I saw one of the posts from one of the companies of giving, I think, offering leaves for, period leaves. I think they were talking about.
Yeah.
So yes, Yes, yes. I think
Yeah.
it's really,
And that would have been unthinkable to even say that word
oh, yeah,
publicly, 10 years,
absolutely.
even 10 years ago, the unthinkable. So I don't even think it'll take that long. It's just people need to come out and talk about these. I mean, even the things that's why I keep mentioning more serious mental illnesses on this
Absolutely.
conversation, because I will bet that most of the people you talk to will not say these things. They will not say schizophrenia. They will not say borderline personality disorder, because these are scary things we don't talk about. We don't even say the word.
True. True, absolutely. So now the question that I have for you is, and I know this is very general, but still very effective, is a question that will always remain in a golden category is people still, it's a still considered that when you seek for help, and it's considered that you're weak. I
Yeah.
mean, people are still, even the ones who won't believe, they still do. It's like, I
Yeah.
won't say that I believe it, but I believe it. So why, what would you like to say to people who still believe somewhere that, seeking help is a sign of weakness? You rightly mentioned some time ago that what would they think of me? How would they perceive me? What image I'm leaving with them. So what would you suggest, people who
Yeah,
think,
this is actually a great point. I suggest two things. One is the obvious, ask for anonymous help. Nobody needs to know who you are. Just
absolutely,
ask for anonymous help. Every good mental health website, including ours, allows you to request help anonymously for precisely this reason. Do that. But second, and I think this is actually more helpful in the long term, help other people. No matter how, even if you're in high school, you think you don't have any career advice to give someone, or you feel really mentally broken, you don't think you have energy to help anyone in their mental health.
yeah,
You have something that you can do to help other people.
absolutely,
We have people who are literally from very young high school students to retirees who are volunteers at Dweebs Global. And some of them help mental health. Some of them cannot even think about mental health, but they're brilliant graphic designers or video editors or something else. You can do something to volunteer and help someone. You can find an organization that needs your skills. You can help people. Try to help people one-on-one wherever possible. Try to mentor people one-on-one. The reason for that is because you can then challenge yourself. Like, do I actually think this person I'm helping is weak? Do I
absolutely.
think that the person I'm helping is any less than? You start opening up your heart to the idea of giving and receiving help. It is much easier to receive help once you have given it. So anonymously is great. It's the easy way, it's the fast way. But if you have time, investing in these relationships where you are the helper
Right.
does wonders for getting people to go and ask for help. In fact, when we look at the statistics and the research, people who volunteer, people who help others are much likelier to seek help and to ask for help because they don't feel guilty about asking for it. They think they have earned it in the world, right? They have done their share of good. They can get their share of good back. And because they know that it is not a weakness to ask for help.
Absolutely. Very good. Very, very insightful points you have. Well,
Well, thank
this is
you.
all great. With
It's
thank you.
very
We
sweet.
always look forward in a conversation like this whenever we have a guest, because I think we want to give the maximum value to audience who are spending time
Yeah,
and
of
listening to
course.
us. And so, awesome, awesome. The last question, and I would say the technically last question I can ask, if there are follow-up questions, is what would you like to say? That the time is changing. People have started living their entire life by a slogan. So that too suitably. So when it suits, when it doesn't. So people have started living their entire life by slogan. So what would you like to say? There's one slogan that says, if you can't handle stress, you can't handle success. Now, of course, there must be something positive side. I don't know how to take it, but what would you suggest to this? People take it differently. If you can't handle stress, you can't handle success. Is it how it is?
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. There's a lot of things on LinkedIn like this. I want to first point out, like, like not just this, but
Right.
fighters will fight through it hard. Anybody who's has any value. I've seen a lot of influencers post things like this. Like, the people who have value fought through this year. They looked at COVID as an opportunity. I'm sorry. This is so ridiculous. I mean, there are famous pictures of Obama crying, right? And the reason it's famous is because he was honest enough about where he was in his life, in his opinion. Almost every president has a therapist they talk to because they're dealing with incredible stressors. To me, you cannot do any good in the world if you are not stressed. It's not about handling the stress. Stress is not something one should handle. It is something that kills you. It does. Stress kills you. It makes your life much shorter. So as it's saying, if you can't handle dying earlier, you can't be successful. It's just nonsense. That is what that slogan is. It is, you know, hey, die earlier or you don't deserve to be successful. It is craziness. And the truth is that stress is something that has to be managed. A certain amount of stress is healthy, by the way. In fact, if you don't view stress as unhealthy, you're likelier to be able to manage it and you're less likely to have negative impacts of it. So stress is itself not unhealthy if you know how to manage it. But the idea that it is a prerequisite to success or that you have to put up with a certain amount of it to be successful is just untrue. You can be born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You can be, Angelina Jolie's kid or a Kardashian or something. You don't have to be stressed. You're going to be successful. You're going to be wealthy. You're going to have all these things. And you could obviously be at the opposite side of that spectrum. So it has nothing to do with how stressed you are. To me, I also think we must challenge the definition of success. To me, there's the only people who say this are people in business. There are people who measure success by money, by clients, by fame. Okay. These are terrible definitions of success. In my opinion, the only definition of success that matters is how much you have been able to help the living beings around you, people, animals, the environment, making life better for the world, given the resources that you had to start with. So that is the only definition of success that matters to me. And if you care about the world, if you are actually out there doing things that matter, you're going to get stressed. And you are not going to be able to handle that stress because you care that much. And because you are doing these things that are good for people. And because if you have a human heart, you're not going to be able to handle all of that because it is a lot. And it is a huge responsibility that we have in this generation to fix things. And we have to, because time is running out on a lot of these things: environment, the economy, hunger, lots of things, AI, it needs to be now. So the idea, like, it's gonna be unhandleable. There are going to be days when the world sucks. I worked very hard on the elections here in this country. Tuesday was unhandleable. What did that mean? I got up in the morning. I was phone banking all day. We stayed up till 11:30. Results weren't in yet. We were worried about all these things. I still did the work. I had a literal fever from the stress. I was running 100-degree fever. I still did the work. I don't think that's handling the stress, but sometimes that is what you do that day because you care about your country, because you care about the world. Absolutely. To me, that's just sort of that might be a part of success, but there are going to be days when you can't handle it. And the truly successful people will have many days when they cannot handle it because they are so dedicated to giving everything that they have to making the world a better place. So sorry for that long answer. This makes me really mad. I see these posts on LinkedIn all the time. I always respond and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Everybody's trying their best. Why would you make people feel that?
No, I think, most of the answers that goes a little long, that longer part is only a part of authenticity. That's all. So
that's very sweet of you. Yeah, but thank you for letting me answer that question because it's something I care passionately about. So thank you.
Absolutely. And living by a slogan, I think this is something, I don't know, when I start talking, things start popping up in my mind differently. Yeah. So there's one of the slogans, I don't know if you like it or hate it, but it's like the slogan is like, previously it was a do or die. Now it is, after that, it was do before you die. And then it was like, don't die until you do. So
that is brilliant. That is brilliant. Oh, that is very interesting. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, great. Well, I think we had some really, we answered really a lot of wonderful questions, and it was not only the questions and the answer that mattered. There were a lot of answers, brilliant answers in the answers, because there were a lot of different questions. So I think I was happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. You had wonderful questions, and it was just a great conversation. And I just really thank you for doing this, because I think just bringing awareness is what we're talking about. So thank you. You're doing a wonderful thing here.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Well, happy to have you here, and we'll love to have you, some other time. I would thank you so much. You have a good day then.
Thank you so much, team.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.